Those of you who have been following the channel for a long time may recall about 2 years ago, I decided to start reading and doing reviews for Berserk. I felt a sudden burst of motivation to finally read the series after Kentaro Miura passed away, and I greatly enjoyed it. However, I think reading a series with the expectation that you need to stop and then produce a video on it is not great for motivation. So I got to Vritannis. I got to around the part where Shirke meets up with, I can't remember her name, the medium, and I just kind of ended up not reading anymore. It wasn't so much I made the decision to stop reading it, I just kind of fell off of it. Tried to read it again about a year ago when the series started back up again, but as it would turn out, going back to reading a series that you haven't touched in a year, right from where you left off, is not a very good idea either. Fortunately then, about 3 months ago or something, I got a new burst of motivation to read Berserk. So I sat down and I read a bunch of it and then stopped reading it to read some other stuff and then got back to reading it, and as of last week I have finally caught up to Berserk, and that's why I'm here today to talk about it. Now, for those of you who have not watched any of my rambling videos before, these are not scripted. I have like some notes that I keep right here, so I recall having some stuff to talk about. So they're not the most coherent videos in the world. However, I wrote out the list of the arcs, because I had planned on talking about each individual arc when I prepared to do this video yesterday. However, I don't really feel like doing that now, so this is really just going to be some rambling. Also, I have to leave in about an hour and a half to go get on a plane, so, you know, we're going to see how coherent this one's going to be. So, you know, buckle your seatbelts. And, let's get on with this wild ride. Where should I start? I should probably start by talking about how much I like the series overall. It's phenomenal. It's a fantastic series. There you go. That's 99% of people's takeaway from Berserk, is that Kentaro Miura was producing a masterpiece. It is one of the best manga ever produced. It has phenomenal art, it has phenomenal characters, it has a fantastic story. All of those things are tied together to make one of the best manga ever released. Now, what should I talk about first? Well, I suppose I should talk about the perception of Berserk, or at least, you know, the idea of Berserk, the surface level Berserk, and how it compares to like the real thing, the real heart of Berserk. When most people who haven't read Berserk think about it, they think of this uber dark, super grim dark fantasy setting in which human beings are running around getting killed, raped, eaten, or some combination of the three on a daily basis, and they are all helpless, save for this one man, Guts Berserk, with his giant berserk sword, who goes around and kills everything in double-page spreads. And yeah, that went on for like 30 years. That's, as far as I can tell, that is the surface-level perception of Berserk. So, man, this world sucks. It's god-awful, but this guy's really cool and really fucking angry, so he is just uniquely equipped to deal with this situation. That is kind of what the Black Swordsman arc is. You know, it's the intro to the series. I'm not sure if Miura had entirely worked out everything he'd wanted to do with Berserk by that point. It's kind of weird, because it's, you know, it's the prologue of the series that takes place after the prologue arc, but is, you know, the start of the series. It's weird. Like, you have Black Swordsman, which is the first dozen or so chapters. I think it's like the first 16 chapters or something. And then Golden Age starts, and then Golden Age is like 90-something chapters. And Golden Age is a flashback arc. It's kind of weird to think about. I haven't done this, but I imagine it would be interesting to start off reading Golden Age and then read the Black Swordsman. It, you know, retroactively provides a lot of context for the way Guts behaves and his motivations, his grudge against Griffith in the Black Swordsman arc. But, you know, it's not nearly as deep. It is far more action and horror-centric than the Golden Age, which, you know, is not bad. The Black Swordsman is not a bad arc. It's just not the Golden Age. So yes, indeed, the Golden Age arc. I believe I had this takeaway when I read it 2 years ago. Yeah, it's one of the best arcs in all of manga, at least. It's probably safe to say it's one of the best arcs in all of fiction. I'm not sure how much fiction has arcs in it, you know? You got manga, you got comic books, you got various TV shows, so, you know. I imagine Golden Age trumps most TV show arcs, and, you know, we know it is superior to the vast majority of manga arcs. I'd say it's divided up into, like, 3 acts. I cannot at the exact moment recall how I would have divided up the 3 acts. You know, you have Guts meeting Griffith and getting acquainted with the Band of the Hawk. You have the 100-Year War, and then you've got, oh god, Griffith has made a very bad decision. Yeah, that just kind of sums up the entire 3rd act, unless you just want to consider the Eclipse to be the 3rd act. I don't know. Now, Golden Age was an arc that I really liked when I read it 2 years ago. But reading it again, as a reread, I don't know what it was, but a lot more of the moments in it just kind of hit me. Just kind of left me sitting there like, huh. Man, this is really deep. I mean, this is really poignant stuff. I did not think I may have grown as a person that much in 2 years, or I don't know, developed more media literacy over the course of 2 years, but I think that probably goes to show, at least with like a very small scale example, that Golden Age is an arc that has a lot of sticking power. You know, you can read Golden Age at one point in your life and have, you know, some sort of reaction to it. And then you read it again later on, after you've had a wide variety of experiences, and it can maybe affect you in a different way. I don't know if that's just me, or if anyone else has had an experience like that. I think that's just indicative of really good media. Now, Golden Age is interesting because, one, it is the establishment for Guts' character, just kind of going throughout the series. It's his backstory arc. And the other thing is that most of it is not really what most people expect Berserk to be if they don't really know anything about it. It's because there's not really a ton of fantasy stuff in most of the Golden Age. You have Zod show up near the beginning, and that's kind of like the, whoa, what the fuck? You know, it's an encounter with a mythical beast. It's supposed to be surreal, like this tale out of a myth for all of the people involved there. Many of them are like, I think this may have been a fucking hallucination or something. But then, as things go on, we get primarily just human-centric conflict. Very well thought out human-centric conflict. But, you know, as things go on, and we keep getting on closer to the eclipse, things start becoming stranger. You know, weirder and weirder things start happening. The normal reality starts to slip away, which ends up being kind of a running theme for Berserk on the whole, until it ends up turning into a fully fledged fantasy setting. Like, the normal world doesn't exist anymore in Fantasia. That's why it's called Fantasia. Guts, I'll talk about Guts a little bit more, like, post-Golden Age, because I think it's better to just kind of talk about the idea of his character arc. Griffith. That man Griffith. I understand why people say he didn't do anything wrong. They're wrong, of course. This needs to be specified. But assuming that they're not being ironic, and they're just a sociopath or something, Griffith... How do I put this? His motivation, or rather, the choices he makes are understandable to an extent. Griffith's motivation is that he wants to realize his dream of having his own kingdom. He wants to be the king living up in the high castle. And he has brought all these other people and all of their dreams and aspirations along with him in order to achieve his own dream. Of course, all of these people have given up their lives for the sake of Griffith's dream, whether they realize it or not. The vast majority of them have not really much of a concept of Griffith's dreams. They just look at him and they're like, wow, you're really charismatic and ethereal. Yes, sir, I will lay down my life for you. Hoorah! Which is why, his relationship with Guts is special, because, he is his only friend. He shares his dreams and aspirations with him. But the sacrifices that Griffith has to make, the unwitting sacrifices, weigh upon him. He feels bad about all of the people, all the children that die for the sake of realizing his dream. He feels remorse for it. But so many people have died. So many people get killed for the sake of his dream, that if he just puts up his hands and he says, no, I can't do it anymore, I'm not going to sacrifice any more people for it, you turn around and you look at the mountain of dead bodies behind him, and they all go, well, why didn't you decide that earlier, before I gave up my life for your dream? So when the time comes for the eclipse, and Griffith has lost everything, he has no other way to achieve his dream anymore, he is not going to make all of those sacrifices be for nothing. And to an extent, I would say it is him also sacrificing his remorse. He's like, I'm not going to feel bad about this anymore. All of you were sacrifices for my dream. This was always, even if not in such horrific fashion, going to be the end result. You were always going to die so that I could obtain my kingdom. Now, this does not make the things that Griffith does not horrendous. Tons of people die for him. Guts assassinates a fucking child for him. And then you have the eclipse. The eclipse. I don't need to say anything about it. You all know it's the eclipse. It makes sense that he would do that. Doesn't make it any less horrific than, sacrificing all of these people who looked up to Griffith, who thought they were friends with Griffith, having them be horribly murdered and devoured by demons. And, in Akaska's case, that is just excessive, That's just insane, over-the-top cruelty and brutality. So, perfectly understandable that Guts would be very upset about this. Guts is an interesting character. I guess there are, two big aspects to his character. One is his ability to connect with others, have people that he feels attached to, and then his motivation. What is he doing with his life? What is the nature of his connections with other people? He loses all of his friends in the eclipse. He loses Casca, the woman he's fallen in love with. She is, raped right in front of him, and her mind is shattered by the trauma of this experience. So, in his mind, he has lost everything that he has very slowly over time obtained by opening up to other people and overcoming his trauma from when he was a kid. So it makes sense that going forward into the Black Swordsman and then the Conviction arc, that he is not very good at interacting with people. He's very opposed to being touched during Golden Age, obviously, because, you know, yeah, that stuff. But, you know, opens up to that with Casca. But then it reaches the point where, after the eclipse, it's just like, man, everyone just dies so easily. I'm not here to care about people. I'm here to get my revenge. And that's where we get into the most interesting aspect of Guts' character, which I consider to be the heart of Berserk, and what makes it more than just this very edgy, dark story about a really angry guy with an absurdly huge sword going around and killing evil people and horrific monsters in over-the-top fashion. It is the conflict within Guts to decide what he is going to devote his life to doing. Griffith took almost everything from him. Is he going to dedicate his life to pursuing revenge against Griffith for what was taken from him? Or is he going to turn around, look at the few irreplaceable things that he still has, and is he going to choose to protect those things rather than throw his life away and throw those things away to try and avenge what was already lost? This is why that spread at the end of Tower of Conviction, where Griffith returns. Guts sees him, and he goes into his rage. He's gonna, oh my god, he's gonna go berserk. And then he remembers Casca's there behind him. And then he, you know, all that fades away. He loses his focus on Griffith. That is ultimately the focus of Guts' character. And, you know, that's what the focus is after Lost Children, is I'm not going to focus on going after Griffith anymore. I'm going to focus on trying to protect Casca and heal her. That's what the whole story after the Lost Children is. Tower of Conviction. Gotta go and save Casca. And everything after that with Millennium Falcon and Fantasia is we gotta get to Elfhelm so that Casca can go back to being the way she was. And it's very questionable if after that happens, if Guts is still going to focus on trying to go and kill Griffith. It's still in question. Now, obviously, as things have transpired, it seems like the two of those things are now intersecting with each other. He will probably have to go and maybe try to get his revenge against Griffith in order to save Casca. But, you know, Griffith is like the absolute now or whatever, the God Hand. May as well be gods themselves. He can't even really touch Griffith because, I don't know, causality or something. He's just, you know, he is femto. He is absurd in power. And Guts, for all of his incredible prowess, for being the strongest human, is still just a human. And how can he compete with that? I have no fucking idea. Doesn't really seem to be possible. I have to wonder if Griffith in this way is just sort of an embodiment of causality. I mean, everything that happens with Griffith in Golden Age is fated. He is the center of the universe. Griffith is the main character of the world. And Guts is just some guy that got caught up in Griffith's story, if you want to think about it that way. So he has to overcome Griffith's built-in plot armor as the man who is just the center of the universe. Though that certainly plays into one of the big things Skull Knight talks about with Guts, where it's just like, yeah, we are all bound to the currents of causality, except maybe not you. Mortal people, beings of the material world, are bound to causality. But you're branded. You're in the interstice between the material world and the astral world. You may be kind of like those other beings, not bound to causality. Maybe you're not just a reflection on the water. which is one of my personal favorite lines in the whole series. You know, he stabs through Mazgus, which probably, you know, based on the way they build up to him, shouldn't be possible, but, you know, Guts always overcomes the impossible. He overcomes all odds. He overcomes fate. He was fated to die in the eclipse. No one survives the eclipse, yet he made it out. How is that possible? Well, it's because it's Guts. Because he's the struggler. He's the man who doesn't care about fate or causality or any of that stuff. He sets his mind to something, and he's going to keep doing it. And maybe it'll work. Maybe he's not just a reflection on the water, but a fish leaping up through it. And, you know, that's part of what makes Guts such a great character. You know, he is one of the best main characters of all time. He's just perfect for the setting of Berserk. Because the idea of Berserk, the theme, I guess, one of the themes, is not that, you know, this world is terrible and life sucks. It's that, yeah, this world is terrible and life sucks, but you just gotta keep going. If you just keep on struggling, things can get better. Because guess what? Guts could have just given up, laid down, and died in the eclipse. He could have just done that. It would have been way easier than all of the shit he's gone through after it. But because he kept struggling, he met his new band of companions. He traveled with others yet again, something he never thought he'd be able to do after losing the Band of the Hawk. And, oh my god, we fixed Casca's mind. Yeah, she still has lingering trauma. Can't really interact with Guts right now. But she has gone back to being a person after years, you know, several years in the story, like, 20 years in the universe, or, you know, outside the universe, 20 years for us, the readers. I can't imagine having read Berserk when it was coming out and getting to the eclipse. That must have just been such a traumatizing event to get attached to characters over the course of like 9 years and then watch them all die like that. Then Casca getting her mind fixed, that's a plotline from what, like, late 90s? Like 99 or something? 1997, 1999? I think it was, it must have been around 97 or something, I think. I don't remember exactly when, like, the Berserk anime started. But, you know, Casca getting her mind fixed after, like, 20 years. It's crazy for, like, a plot point to be completed. You know, a plot thread. Follow that, complete it over such a long period of time. I can't imagine experiencing that, following that. I mean, that plotline's been going on for longer than I've been alive. It's crazy to imagine that. But, you know, none of these things would have been achieved if Guts just gave up and just accepted how terrible the world was and was just like, nah, there's nothing I can do. It's because he keeps on struggling. That, yeah, things are bad, but he makes his way through the bad stuff. And when he comes out on the other side, even if things aren't great, they're a little bit better. And there are still things there worth fighting for and that make life worth living. There's also another really good sort of idea from the Conviction arc, which I say a lot because the Conviction arc is great, that the people who died at the Tower of Conviction, who got washed away in the demonic flood, those were all people who did not feel any degree of personal urgency, capability. They didn't think they could do anything. So they laid down, they got on their knees, and they started to pray to God, please save me. And they all died. But the people who tried desperately to survive were the ones that ended up making it. So, you know, it's the difference between those who cling and those who struggle for life. Now I should probably talk about arcs that I really like. Well, you know, how I feel about certain arcs. Black Swordsman, it's good. you know, it's nothing crazy. It's a solid arc. Not bad, but doesn't really have the amazing narrative elements that the arc that come after the fact have. Then you have Golden Age, which, you know, a decent portion of this video was spent talking about stuff related to Golden Age. I consider it to be the best written arc. I think it has the most consistent narrative and emotional high points. It has the most out of any arc, in my personal opinion. And, you know, it's the best written. It's a great, like, a 90 chapter long tragedy. You read the Golden Age, and I guess there are two different experiences. There's the experience of just reading through it and watching how these characters' relationships develop and fall apart. And then there is the reading it again. Either you're doing a reread or you're reading it with knowledge of what already happens. And you watch this and you see how things transpire. And you feel so dreadful as you see all the ways in which the terrible stuff could have been avoided. Largely just, man, these people should really talk about their feelings, but no one seems to want to do that. Oh well, I guess everyone's gonna die now. It's the whole thing. It's just, you have this horrible feeling of dread as it goes onwards. Because you see these characters and their relationships, their dreams and aspirations, and you want things to work out for them. You can see the way things will work out for them, but you just know what's going to happen. You know it's all going to end in the eclipse. And everything really does begin and end at the eclipse. I mean, it gets brought up like every 50 chapters or something. It's just like, man, that eclipse thing, that sure was a thing that happened that has ramifications on everyone involved up until the present day. Tower of Conviction, or, you know, just the Conviction arc on the whole, I know is a lot of people's favorites if it's not Golden Age. And I think the reason for that largely is because it is the arc that has the main theme of Berserk most central to it, that being Guts' conflict over, you know, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna pursue revenge, or are you gonna protect what you still have? And then, you know, the idea of struggling to keep on living in this merciless world. That's why I think it's probably like the second best written arc. Then we get to the Millennium Falcon, which that is the real name of the arc. I thought it was like Hawk of the Millennium Empire. Okay, so that is an alternate name, I guess. So it's Millennium Falcon, which, you know, sounds like I'm talking about Star Wars now. Or it's Hawk of the Millennium Empire, which is more of a mouthful, but is a cooler arc title. Now, I think this may be my favorite arc, and it's for very stupid, surface-level reasons. And that's just because it has the most cool shit in it. I'm sorry. Sometimes the shonen brain, it just takes over. I look at Guts cutting down trolls in a dozen double-page spreads. I see him don the Berserker armor and have the best fight in the series against Grunbeld. I see all the really cool shit with Ganishka and the Kushan and the new Band of the Hawk and, you know, the advent of Fantasia. And I like, oh my god, I slap my hands on my cheeks and I fucking point and I soy pog at it and I go, oh my god, that's so cool. I'm sorry. This arc just has, like, a lot of the really cool stuff in the series. There's just so much of it. There's so much stuff in it where I'm just like, god, that's so fucking cool. Also, Ganishka's a pretty good villain. You know, I didn't really know much about Ganishka as a character. It's interesting to have a villain whose motivation is that they're just kind of consumed with fear. Like, they're terrified. They were terrified in life as a human being. And now as an apostle, arguably the strongest apostle, they see Griffith, they see the Absolute, and they're terrified again. So they have to reincarnate a second time through a man-made Bayolet and become the fucking god of destruction. To still just be consumed by fear and just this general perception of the world as the way that most people perceive the world of Berserk to be. His perception of the world is it's dark, it's cold, it's merciless. That's this world, that is life. It's so sad. That really hit me really hard when I got to it. And yeah, you know, you have Zod and Skull Knight's weekly skirmishes. You know, Thursday night comes along at the Outback Steakhouse. Skull Knight drives up on his skull horse. And who's standing there in the doorway to Outback? Oh my god, it's Zod the Immortal. It's that time of week again. Causality makes it so that these guys have to fight each other. Just every once in a while, they have a quota to keep up. But it's A-okay, because they're both so fucking cool and real. God, I love both of those guys so much. And now we have our most recent arc of Fantasia, which is, interesting. I don't think it's as good as the previous arc. It's better than Black Swordsman, but I don't think it's better than the other 3 big arcs. I think that's just because a lot of it is lacking a bit in some of the narrative and emotional high points. Still has a lot of really cool shit. You know, Boat Arc had the Sea God. Fuck, that's so cool. I'm glad the 8 years of Boat. I'm glad I was able to read that in about a single day. That's a bit mind-boggling. And then you get to Elfhelm, which is where, you know, we get more of the narrative and emotional focus, because it's, you know, we're finally here, we can finally heal Casca. And obviously, Farnese and Shirke going into Casca's mind, traveling through her memories and her trauma, seeing those things manifested. It was great. You know, that's obviously the best part of Fantasia, because that is the narrative and emotional high point of the arc. That's where it's at its most important. And, you know, then you get to the post-Miura's death chapters, where now it's not being written by Miura, it's being written by his friend, the Holy Land author, whose name is escaping me at the moment as I quickly Google search it. Kojimori. Okay, I mostly remembered it. I guess it's more so he's writing out the dialogue, but he's working off the outline for the rest of the plot that Miura left. And then you have him doing some of the art, and then you obviously have a lot of Miura's assistants doing it, because a lot of their work in the years leading up to Miura's death was, a lot of it was them learning to replicate his art style. I believe that was, in some part, the purpose for the other series that he released a few chapters for when he wasn't releasing Berserk chapters. I can't quite remember their names off the top of my head right now. I think you can definitely feel Miura's absence in the newer chapters. They were very quick reads. Like, getting through them was really easy. I know they were like a little bit on the shorter side, but maybe it's just because a lot of them were, you know, more action. It's the destruction of Elfhelm. A lot of it was just really quick action. Like, I was able to read those chapters in a couple minutes. I'm not going to be shocked if that ends up largely being how it goes forward. There are some exceptions to this, of course. You have the chapter where Guts thinks about the Dragon Slayer, and, just kind of the idea of his sword in general, how that's always been his closest and most trusted companion, but it wasn't able to do anything for him when he tried to save Casca from Griffith. And then you have, his encounter with the Beast of Darkness. Arguably the real main villain, because he's, depending on how things go, Guts is probably going to give up trying to get revenge on Griffith, and it's just going to be more so dealing with his own internal darkness. those were obviously great. Those were very narrative-heavy chapters. But outside of those two, I'm pretty sure they were separate chapters. I did read those last chapters in very quick succession. It just sort of lacks the feel when Miura was doing it. And I think that mostly is just because they are following an outline. They are following Miura's instructions for how the rest of the story is going to go, and it's not Miura writing it out and putting these sort of thought into it that he would do. Not to say that these guys are being thoughtless with it. They, they're very obviously dedicating a lot of respect to continuing Miura's series. But thus far, you can tell it's other people doing it now, and I don't imagine that's going to change. We'll see, though. We'll see. Because we do have those two chapters where, you can sort of feel more of the heart that Berserk has in them. And with time, I would not be shocked if the team working on it now is able to do a better and better job at conveying the feel that Miura brought to the work. Because, if there's any people that are going to be able to at least somewhat imitate the way that he was able to produce the series, it would be the guy who was his best friend that he always talked to about the series, and the people who actually worked on the series with him. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Berserk. It's a phenomenal series. If you haven't read it, why did you watch this video? But you should. It is one of the all-time greats. You will not regret the time you dedicate to reading this series. It is phenomenal. I don't know where I would personally put it in my favorite series. It would be up there somewhere. It would be up there. It's not going to be my new favorite, because I think there are other series where, even if it wasn't with the same sort of emotional depth, got more of a response from me throughout the entirety of the read. Maybe it was just because of how I went about reading them, or the time at which I read them. Those are always things that you got to take into consideration. But, definitely up there. Definitely in the top 5 series I've ever read. In terms of, pure narrative quality, it would be 1 or 2. It's between this and Usogui for what I think is the best written series I've ever read. But I don't think the rankings really matter that much. It's great, and I'm glad I decided to finally sit down and read it in its entirety. But with that, that's all I've got for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my uploads. I have a playlist of other ramblings this will be in, and I also have some Berserk arc reviews, I think on here and on my backup channel, because the channel was at risk of getting taken down by copyright strikes back when I did those. So those are there if you want to see some of my takes on the series back when I first tried to read through it. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys around. Take care.